that'll do for Aston Villa. A 1-0 win away at Everton on David Moyes' return to Goodison Park. This was always going to be a tricky match, a game which was going to test Villa's mettle really, and if they were going to come out with 3 points, they'd have had to have matched Everton's fight and their grit there. That was going to be the big test for Villa today. They played some good football during 90 minutes, of course. This is a good side, but they were made to scrap at certain points, and I'll start by saying straight away, I don't think there was another midfielder in the Premier League that I'd rather have in that game than Boubacar Kamara. He epitomised everything that Villa had to do to get 3 points out of the match. He was exceptional. I asked Unai Emery after the game about how important is he to the side. I mean, that's an obvious question, of course, but how important he was in a game like this, especially for me. Amadou Onana had a very bright first 8 minutes of the game, but as soon as he went into the book, unfortunately, he was he was walking on a tightrope, made a couple more fouls after that, and by no means should have been sent off, but you can get a yellow card for an accumulation of fouls, and it was getting to a point where I think Emery may have been thinking to even replace him. But just in terms of talking about midfield, I thought Onana played very well for the first 8 minutes. Kamara, though, was exceptional, man of the match. Tielemans as well, used the ball very well in midfield. Ollie Watkins getting his first goal in open play since the end of November. Obviously scored twice between tonight's goal and the goal he scored against Crystal Palace in that 2-2 draw. 2 penalties though against Brighton and Brentford. Obviously they all count, and that's now Watkins' 8th league goal of the season in 20 appearances. It's a good record. He's only a couple away now from hitting double digits. He's probably not far away from his tally from where he was last season, to be perfectly honest. And throw into the mix John Duran's goals and the influence he's been having on the side. It's Villa certainly have plenty of goals and contributions in their team, but it's conceding goals that's been the issue. And today, the big thing, obviously winning, that's most important, as Emery said after the match, but it was keeping that clean sheet, that elusive clean sheet on the road that Villa haven't had this season until tonight. Their first on the road in the league since beating Arsenal 2-0 at the Emirates. Where do they go next? The Emirates on Saturday. I feel like Alan Partridge there a little bit. That 2-0 win, of course, was a springboard for Villa to get into the Champions League. While you can't say the same thing this time around after keeping a clean sheet away from home against Everton, it's certainly a springboard for them to collect a solid amount of points in their next few games. Villa play, of course, Arsenal this weekend. They play West Ham at home. They play Wolves away, and they also play Ipswich at home. That is a that is a good opportunity, shall I say, even for Villa to collect a strong amount of points, which will keep them in that top 7 and of course in the picture for Champions League football. 5th, you hope, for Villa's sake, would be enough for Champions League this season. And currently they are 3 points off 4th, and you look at the results that happened the other night. City dropping points, Chelsea dropping points again. We know that City have had a bit of a tough run. City have drastically underperformed. Chelsea have done very well, but have come off the boil in recent weeks, and I don't think anyone expected that. So that's why Villa can, they've essentially been consistently inconsistent, you would argue, because other teams, for example Newcastle, didn't start the season well at all, but have now shot up the league. Chelsea are doing the opposite. They started really well and now have dropped down a few places, and Villa completely closed the gap to them now. Well, not literally, but they are within only a few points. But Villa have always been in and around these positions, so you kind of have to admire in a way that actually, and I've said this before, they can definitely improve from this position. I've said that many times. We haven't seen the best Villa yet, and I still don't think we have. But it's nice to see, even though they're playing a team in Everton who have struggled to score goals. I think that's now 9 out of 11 games they haven't scored in, which is it's dreadful, to be perfectly honest. But Villa can only beat what's in front of them and keep a clean sheet against the team that they're playing. So, and again, this isn't Everton side who were low on confidence, but buoyed by David Moyes' return, and the crowd got up for it. There were a few hairy moments. I say a few, there's probably two. The Cavalier chance at the end of the match. But apart from that, Villa defended manfully. Really did dig in. Ezri Konsa kind of eased his way through the game as you'd expect him to. Tyrone Mings, colossal in the air, made one error on the ball when he played. It was hardly an error. He played the ball back to Martinez. It was a bit short. Martinez then puts it into the stands, but that allowed Everton to kind of get back in the game a little bit after the first 10 minutes, because Villa had 2 shots in the first 6 minutes and were by far the better side in the kind of early stages, which is exactly what Moyes, he would have been planning that game as, let's start well, let's get on top of Villa in the first 20, let's kind of assert our dominance. That's exactly what Villa did. So full credit to Emery and his game plan. The players executed that well. Villa could have been a couple of goals in front in that first half. Ollie Watkins having a great chance after an Ashley Young error. It did remind me a little bit of when Ashley Young threw the ball to John Duran. What was that, last season, I think, in the 4-0. Similar this time with his feet passing the ball to Watkins to run an on goal, but his effort curling towards the far post went wide. And Onana and Rodgers had the chances, 2 shots even in the first opening moments of the match. Then Jacob Ramsey has a great chance to put Villa ahead before the break. It wasn't to be. Villa went in 0-0, but they started the second half just as well as they started the first half, really. Emery said that Villa had more control in the first half than in the second, and I agreed with that, but I think that's probably because they opened the scoring. I think it's one of those where Everton would have been happy to have taken a point and taken a clean sheet out of this game if they could manage it. But Villa, I think their quality showed in the end. That's kind of my kind of summary from the match, and this isn't a game where Villa can get too high on. But I said the same when Villa lost to Newcastle, and we're losing those away games, away against Liverpool, away against Chelsea, and other places, difficult places to go. Nottingham Forest too. You can't get low on those defeats either. Just as much you can't get too high and expect too much now you've beaten Everton, a side who are really struggling in the league. But as I mentioned earlier, Villa are now in a period of games where you fancy them in. Arsenal will be a difficult game, of course, but you fancy home matches against West Ham, who Villa beat recently, and of course Ipswich as well at home, Wolves away. No game is one that you can take for granted. But Villa, if they can get those results, they'll be in that picture. And then you play the likes of Nottingham Forest at home, Newcastle at home, Chelsea at home. You play the teams around you, and that's then a chance to jump above them or keep ahead of them if they do pick up a really good amount of points in the next month or two. Of course, Champions League is also on the horizon, and this is something which Villa will have to deal with as well. Celtic and Monaco, the 2 games that will be played either side of hosting West Ham. So they'll have to deal with that as well. Of course, the FA Cup matches are after Villa play Wolves at Molineux. That comes the weekend after that. So there's plenty of competition. Emery was asked about it after full time. He usually is, and he gives a similar answer as well. Usually about how they're trying to kind of balance, but also put those competitions in different kind of departments. Really, not think about the Champions League or the matches that are coming. You deal with what's in front of you, and kind of compartmentalise those different competitions. I think that's probably the right thing to do. Villa going really well in the Champions League and have conceded very few goals, but the Premier League they've conceded lots of goals. And when I asked Emery about the clean sheet situation, again, first in the league away from home since Arsenal back in mid-April, Emery straight away kind of shook his head, and not at me, but in terms of we are still conceding too many goals. So this isn't, Villa haven't just overcome their problems in one match, especially in a match where they're playing an Everton side who are, I don't know if this is kind of historically bad on their part, but it's a really terrible record that they've got at the moment, that they can't score goals or many open play goals. It's actually the first time in history that Villa have kept 4 successive clean sheets in away games against Everton. So they have a really strong record against the Toffees since gaining promotion. So after my ramblings there, key takeaway is that Villa need Kamara to stay fit. I don't think they have a player like him in the team, and that's not a criticism. It's you can say the same for most teams. If one of your best players goes injured, you're going to miss them. So that's something that Villa will have to manage. They obviously have Onana, who is a very different profile. I think it's a player who Villa will try and mould as they go on with him. I think it is quite staggering really how well he's come back from that injury too. Can't forget he had an ACL, recovered from it terrifically, and the way he plays is very combative. He loves his duels. It's a real testament to how well firstly the Villa medical staff have treated him, and of course Tyrone Mings-Nemi Buendia, but just kind of this feels like a bit of this feels like Kamara's night. That it just really did epitomise everything that was good about Villa today. And there's not a million things to talk about in terms of positives, but the win is the only thing that matters. A clean sheet is obviously a huge bonus, and without Kamara I feel like those two things would have been much harder to achieve today.